Hi, and welcome to the CIRSGroup.com podcast thing, as Barbara named it. I'm Jacie,
And I'm Barbara.
and today we are talking about the diagnostic process for CIRS. So, if you think CIRS might sound like it's something you have, how to actually go forth and be diagnosed.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm excited to get into this because I feel like this is the big thing that people ask us quite often. Like, I think I have it. What do I do? Like, oh well, here's all the things. Um, so the first thing is, of course, the symptom clusters. That's what I usually send to people if they DM me. Jacie made a beautiful, handy infographic, which I find much easier to read than like the official Shoemaker one. But it is 37 symptoms arranged in 13 clusters. And you need just one within each of those clusters to have that cluster. And you need 9 out of the 13 to probably have CIRS.
I think it's 8 of the 13.
Is it 8? I always
It,
say 8 or 9, and now I know. So it's 8. Let's go with 8.
so I think the more you have, the more likely it is you have
Sure.
CIRS. So even if you have like 6 or 7 of the symptom clusters and you like it still feels like a correct thing for you, you've looked down different rabbit holes trying to figure it out. Like at that point, it might be still worth doing the blood work. And it could just be like a terminology issue for you that you don't relate to the symptom as it's labeled. So I would encourage you, like 8 of 13 is the like clinical standard. But if you have 7, I feel like you're almost there.
Yeah. No, that's a very, very good point. I completely agree with that. I think that's why when people tell me their symptoms and they might have like 3 that are like major for them and they're significant, they're it's hurting their day-to-day life and they all fit within CIRS. But again, it's only 3 symptoms they're telling me. I am like, okay, well, look at this infographic, like look at the rest of these possibilities because you may be suffering with these other things that don't seem as big in contrast to these major 3 that are hurting you. Because I mean, I think we both experienced that as we healed, as we were actually going through the protocol. Other symptoms came up, and it's not like they weren't there before. We just didn't notice them because the bad ones were so bad, right?
Right. I think everyone has like their CIRS archetype symptom. Like CIRS manifests in a lot of different ways for a lot of different people. For me, it was so much pain, just like physical body pain, joint pain. But for you, it was GI issues. And so
Right.
when we're talking about CIRS, it really is so multi-system, multi-symptom. It's hard to be look at someone and be like, that one symptom is CIRS. And that's why the symptom clusters are super helpful because it can help you identify CIRS, even if you have 3 main symptoms. There are things we normalize. Like I would say, a really big hallmark CIRS symptom is getting up at 4 a.m. to pee.
Mm.
And a lot of people really normalize that. But if you're getting up every night at 4 a.m. to pee, that's frequent urination. That's a symptom cluster.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. And so if you have all of those, or if you have 8 of the 13, or somewhere near there, whatever you've determined,
8-ish.
yeah, 8ish, the next thing to do is to take the VCS test, or vision contrast sensitivity test, which is a free test if you don't do the questionnaire attached to it. And if you do the questionnaire, it's $15. And we are not affiliated with that test. We don't make money if you take the test. But that is an online test that you can do from the comfort of your own home whenever you want. So
Yeah.
that's a good thing. It's vcstest.com.
hmm And the reason the VCS test is relevant to a CIRS diagnosis is twofold. One, biotoxins, which is what causes CIRS. Biotoxins directly impact your nerve function. And the secondary impact, the reason the VCS test works, is because you have inflammation clogging up the tiny capillaries in the back of your eye. So you lose the ability to see blurred lines. So this visual contrast sensitivity test is essentially testing your ability to see blurred lines.
Right. And I should say that we have seen in the group, and also Judy Cho and the people that she has tested for CIRS, we've seen some people have CIRS that do pass the vision test. So just because you pass it doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have CIRS. However, if you fail the vision test, it's pretty likely you do. Like that's the you were explaining, Jacie, before we started recording, the specificity versus.
Yes, so it's high specificity, low, no, high sensitivity, low specificity. I can't even say it. I shouldn't talk about this. But what that means is if you fail it, you very likely have CIRS, but there's a certain percentage of the population that will pass it that still do have CIRS. So if you fail it, it's like definitely go forth with the blood work. But if you pass it and you have 8 of the 13 symptom clusters, you should still get the blood work.
Yep. Yeah, and that is generally even what I think I've read in the Shoemaker text. Like even like at the top, they say that as well. So I guess this is a more common problem than I think I was aware of when I first took the test. I thought that test was like accurate as heck and like I could just rely on it. But I definitely I recommend it with that caveat now when people ask me about it, knowing all of that. So you mentioned blood work. Blood work is the next process, and the blood work is expensive. There's no way around that, unfortunately. There's one thing that will be tested that's genetic, and you will never need to test that again, and that is the most expensive part of the test. So at least, you know, you do that once and you verify that you have one of the haplotypes that makes you susceptible to CIRS. So that at least you won't need to retest as you go through treatment. But as you do go through treatment, you end up getting retested on a lot of the other levels as you go to see how you're doing. But yeah. Did you have
Yeah,
anything to add about that?
yeah, I would say a cheat code kind of like through this CIRS process, it's the treatment protocol takes a long time and it is expensive. But there are things you can do to like get the most bang for your buck. And I have to say that one of the things I really am grateful that I did was I got my blood work through Nutrition with Judy. And the reason I'm grateful I did that was because not only did I get my blood work results back and interpreted for me, but she also provided me a crap ton. That's the like actual unit of measurement of additional resources and information. So she gave me like a provider recommended provider list and supportive protocol. And I think that was so worth it to me in my CIRS beginnings to just like have that level of support behind me. So while the blood work is expensive, you can make it a little bit more valuable by going through someone like Nutrition with Judy or a nutritionist, or even if you start stepping into working with a CIRS provider, that way they can give you the background support as well.
Yes. Really, I want to hammer that home as well because I know my CIRS practitioner, he'll look at my blood work, like now that I'm on, you know, through the treatment and all that, he'll look at my blood work and he'll basically point out anything that's out of range. And that's about it. And we'll like, oh, that's out of range. Maybe we'll test that again next month or whatever. And that's the extent of our discussion on it. And I could probably press him to get more information, but Judy gives that freely. Like Judy will take, it's not just, oh, this is out of range. No. It's like a full, at least a paragraph, if not like graphs and all kinds of other stuff explaining each and every blood marker that you tested and what it means that you're low or high or what it means when it's healthy versus when it's not. Like, I mean, she really goes into it almost to the point of overwhelm. But again, that's why we started the CIRS group, so that we could all kind of like talk about it and help each other understand all of this information that we're getting as we're getting tested. So yeah, that's just want to reiterate. I also very much recommend getting tested through nutritionwithjudy.com is her website.
So you had talked about the genetic markers for the haplotypes that kind of tell you which biotoxins you're sensitive to. And the other half of the blood work is really looking at the downstream impact that CIRS had on you. And it's not going to be those typical inflammatory markers that you might be used to. It's not stuff like rheumatoid factor or CRP. It's very specific data points, which for me was really reassuring because I knew that there were like clinical standards through the protocol that we could objectively see that blood work was getting better. And it's stuff like TGF beta 1, MMP9, VEGF. Like these are really specific data points.
Yes. And be ready for your lab to either, or your phlebotomist, I guess, to be very confused by some of the tests. Maybe they've never seen them before. Oh, wait, you can't do it here. We have to order this. You have to go to a different location, all that kind of fun stuff. So if you want to save yourself a trip, before you go get the blood work, you may actually want to call and double check that they have whatever it is they need at that particular location that you plan to get your blood work done at.
Yeah, that's a really good tip.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, that's I think that that about covers the diagnostic part. Was there anything else
Yes,
that you wanted to add?
I think to be diagnosed, like very specifically, you have to have 8 of the 13 symptom clusters. Most providers will have you try to identify your exposure event. So once you figure out what your genetic haplotypes are and what your biotoxins you're sensitive to, like it has to make sense that you were exposed to mold or you were exposed to Lyme. And then you have to have a certain amount of those inflammatory blood markers have to be out of range in order for you to be diagnosed with CIRS. So that's how you get diagnosed. At the point you do the blood work, if you work through someone like Nutrition with Judy, at that point you would be handed off to a CIRS practitioner and officially diagnosed and then treated.
Perfect. Yep. I think that covers it. So thank you so much for listening. I hope that this was helpful for you to figure out what the next step is if you are suspecting that CIRS, chronic inflammatory response syndrome, might be the thing that's causing some issues for you. So as always, for more information and group support and all that fun stuff and access to us, and also to be able to make requests on what we cover on the podcast, join us at theCIRSgroup.com. We'll
We'll
see
see
you
you over
there.
there.